The moment the chapel doors swung open, the music didn't just stop, the whole room froze. My sister was standing at the front in white lace, shaking so hard her veil kept sliding off her shoulder. And my mother was trying to smile through panic like it was all still part of the plan. Then I saw the first uniform step into the aisle, then the second. Then the sound that made my dad's face turn gray, handcuffs clicking. If you're watching this on Jenny's Karma Diaries, you already know what kind of story this is. It's the kind where people think they can do something heartless, wipe their hands clean, and walk into a wedding like nothing happened, until karma walks in behind them. I was outside, leaning against the hood of my car, breathing slowly like I'd been practicing calm my whole life. And right beside me was Max, my German shepherd, alive, safe, and looking up at me like he'd been waiting for this moment too. I broke a treat in half and fed it to him while the wedding guests whispered and pointed through the glass. My sister had demanded something blue for her big day. I just didn't think she meant police uniforms. Before I tell you how my parents sold my dog to fund her wedding, and why they never saw the consequences coming, do me a quick favor. Hit like, subscribe, and share this if you believe karma doesn't miss receipts. And tell me in the comments right now, if your family sold your pet behind your back, would you forgive them? Or would you make sure they learned the lesson? Inside the venue, my sister's mascara was already running. She kept saying, "This can't be happening. Not today. Not in front of everyone." My dad tried to step forward like he could talk his way out of it, like he always did. But one officer simply held up a small handheld scanner and said, "Calm as ice, we're here for the dog." That's when my mom's mouth opened, but no sound came out, because they thought Max was just a dog, a price tag. A quick solution to a $50,000 wedding fantasy they couldn't afford. They thought if they sold him quietly, I'd cry, I'd search, I'd eventually give up, and they'd get their perfect day. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that Max's microchip wasn't registered to me. It was registered to a police officer. And that single detail was about to turn their perfect wedding into a public crime scene. I need you to understand what Max was to me before you understand what they did to him. In my house, love was never handed out evenly. My parents had two daughters, but they only ever acted like they had one. My sister, Chloe, was the kind of kid my mom bragged about to strangers in grocery store lines. "She's going to do big things," she'd say, like Chloe was already a celebrity. And me? I was the practical one, the quiet one, the one they called when something needed fixing, cleaning, carrying, or paying for. If Chloe forgot to do a chore, my mom would laugh and say, "Oh, honey, you're so busy." If I missed a single thing, it was, "Why are you always such a disappointment?" After a while, you stop trying to be seen. You just try to survive the day without becoming the target. Max showed up in my life during the loneliest year I can remember. I wasn't even planning to get a dog. I was just tired. Tired of walking into rooms where my voice didn't matter. Tired of feeling like I lived in someone else's house, even though my name was on my driver's license and my childhood photos were in the same hallway. A friend told me about a shepherd that needed a home. When I met Max, he didn't bark like he wanted to prove something. He just sat there, calm and watchful, like he was reading me. When I reached out, he leaned into my hand like he'd been waiting for someone to choose him. And I did. I chose him. From that day on, Max became my routine, my peace, my excuse to get outside. When my parents slammed doors or gave me that cold silence that could make the whole house feel smaller, Max would press against my leg like a promise that I wasn't alone. He'd follow me from room to room, and at night he'd sleep near my bed like he was guarding the only person in that house who ever really needed guarding. But Chloe didn't see him as family. She saw him as a luxury item. The moment Chloe got engaged, the house turned into wedding headquarters. Not a normal wedding either. Not something small and sweet. Chloe wanted the kind of wedding that looked expensive even to people who hated her. She wanted the dramatic venue, the huge cake, the designer dress, the flower wall, the champagne tower. Every detail built for social media. One night, my dad came home with that tense look he got when bills were stacked too high. He said the words like he was trying to make them sound casual. "Weddings cost more than people think." Chloe didn't even look up from her phone. "Mine has to be perfect." My mom nodded like that was a fact of nature. It's her special day. I remember sitting at the dinner table, Max lying by my chair, his head on his paws, eyes half closed. The air smelled like garlic and roasted chicken, but the room felt cold anyway. Dad was tapping his fork against his plate, and my mom was making that fake thoughtful face she used whenever she was about to suggest something cruel and call it practical. Chloe finally said it out loud like it was the most obvious solution in the world. Max is a purebred German shepherd, right? You could sell him. People pay thousands for dogs like that. I stopped chewing. My throat tightened so fast it felt like I couldn't breathe. My dad glanced at me, then back at Chloe. How much? Chloe shrugged, casual and greedy. 3 grand, easy. Maybe more. And honestly, if we're being smart, that could cover the deposit on the venue. Or the dress. Or both. I stared at my parents, waiting for one of them to say, "That's disgusting." Waiting for one of them to remember Max wasn't a couch or an old TV. He was alive. He trusted us. But my mom just frowned at me and said, "Don't be dramatic. He's an animal." I felt my hands curl into fists under the table. He's not an animal. He's my dog. He's my family. Chloe rolled her eyes so hard it was like she wanted the whole room to see it. Oh my God, you always make everything about you. My dad's voice changed then, harder, sharper. Your sister gets one wedding. One. We're trying to help her, and you're sitting here acting like this dog matters more than her happiness. I leaned down and touched Max's head, slow and steady, because if I didn't, I was going to lose control. Max looked up at me, calm, loyal, completely unaware that the people across the table were already turning him into a number. I said, as clearly as I could, "No, I'm not selling him." My mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "You live under our roof." That was her favorite sentence. Her way of reminding me I was never truly safe there. Chloe smiled like she'd already won. If you cared about family, you'd do it. And that's when I realized something that hurt more than their words. They weren't asking. They were testing how far they could push me. So I did what I always did to survive in that house. I kept my voice calm. I kept my face neutral. And I made sure Max stayed close to me every second I could. Because deep down, I could feel it coming. That quiet shift in the air when people decide your no doesn't count. The next afternoon, I did something I almost never did anymore. I trusted my family to respect a clear boundary. I had an early shift at work, and before I left, I made sure Max was in my room with his water bowl full and his favorite toy beside him. I even double-checked the window locks because my gut wouldn't settle. Max sat by the door when I grabbed my keys, tail thumping once like he was saying, "Hurry back." I bent down, pressed my forehead to his, and whispered, "I'll be home soon." He licked my hand, warm and steady, and I walked out trying to ignore the knot in my stomach. When I came back, the house felt wrong before I even opened the door. It was too quiet. No nails tapping on the floor, no soft huff, no shadow following me down the hallway. "Max?" I called out, forcing my voice to stay level, like maybe he was just asleep. Nothing. I dropped my bag and walked straight to my room. His bowl was still full. His toy was still there. My bed was neatly made in a way I never make it. And the leash that always hung on the hook by the door was gone. I didn't scream. Not because I wasn't terrified, because I was. But because in that house, panic was entertainment. They fed on it. I walked to the kitchen and my mom was at the counter stirring something like it was a normal day. My dad was sitting at the table, and Chloe was on her phone, smiling at her screen like she'd just won something. I asked one simple question: "Where's Max?" My mom didn't even turn around at first. "Oh, that dog. The front door must have been left open. He ran out." My dad nodded quickly, too quickly. "Yeah, he's probably out chasing something. He'll come back." Chloe let out a little dramatic sigh and said, "This is why pets are stressful. They're so unpredictable." I stood there, staring at them, letting the lie hang in the air. And right then, I knew. Not suspected. Knew. Max didn't run out. Max was taken. I forced my face into the expression they expected. Worried, shaky, helpless. I did the whole performance. I grabbed my coat. I called his name outside. I walked up and down the street like a desperate owner. I even knocked on a couple of neighbors' doors. But the whole time, my mind was working cold and sharp. When I came back inside, my mom was already acting annoyed, like Max disappearing was something I had done to her. You see? We told you. Dogs do this. I nodded. Quiet. Yeah, maybe. Then I did the one thing my family never noticed, because they never thought I was smart enough to do it. I watched them. My dad kept checking his phone. Chloe kept smiling at hers. And my mom kept glancing toward the hallway like she was making sure I didn't go into their room. So I waited until they were distracted. Then I walked past Chloe and accidentally bumped the edge of the table. Her phone lit up for a second, just long enough for me to see a notification preview. Buyer confirmed, dog collected, cash received. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like the floor moved under me. I didn't grab the phone. I didn't accuse her. I didn't explode. Because if I did, they would lock everything down and act like I was crazy, just like they always did when I got too close to the truth. Instead, I said softly, I'm going to keep looking. And I walked away like I was defeated. Up in my room, I closed the door and leaned against it for a second, trying to breathe without falling apart. My hands were shaking. My eyes burned. But underneath the fear, something else was rising. Something steadier. I pulled out my own phone and opened the voice memo app. Then I walked back downstairs. I kept my voice small on purpose. Mom, Dad, if Max comes back, can you please call me right away? I'm really scared. My mom sighed, loud and theatrical, like my fear was an inconvenience. We already told you. The door was open. He ran away. Stop making this a bigger deal than it is. My dad added, You're always overreacting. And I let them say it. I let them repeat the lie clearly, on my recording, while they thought I was just being emotional. Then I went back upstairs and sat on my bed, staring at the empty spot on the floor where Max always slept. That's when I opened my laptop. I'm going to tell you something I hadn't told anyone in my family, not because it was a secret, but because they never cared enough to ask. I didn't get Max from a random ad online. Max came through a retired canine foster program run by the sheriff's department in a neighboring county. He wasn't some designer status dog. He was trained, disciplined, and more loyal than anyone I'd grown up with. And the officer who helped place him with me, Officer Ryan, a canine handler, had kept Max's microchip registered under his name during the transition paperwork. He told me, It'll protect him. If anyone ever tries something, that chip will lead right back to us. I remembered smiling at the time, thinking it was just a formality. Sitting there in that empty room, I realized it wasn't a formality. It was a shield. My eyes filled with tears, but my voice stayed calm when I whispered, Okay, so this is what you chose. And I want to ask you something before I go further. What would you do in that moment? If you saw proof your own family sold your dog for cash, would you confront them immediately? Or would you stay quiet and start building a case? I called Officer Ryan with my hands still shaking, but I kept my voice low, like if I spoke too loud, the whole thing would become real. He answered on the second ring. Hey, everything okay? I didn't start with drama. I started with facts. Ryan, Max is gone. My parents are saying he ran away, but I just saw a message on my sister's phone. They sold him. I think they took cash. There was a short pause, and the tone in Ryan's voice changed. Not angry, professional. The same calm you hear right before a door gets kicked in. Is he chipped? He asked. I swallowed. Yes. And it's still registered to you. Another pause, then a slow exhale. Okay, listen to me. First, don't confront them. Second, don't tip them off. Third, Max matters more than everything else. We'll find him fast. That was the moment my chest loosened just enough for me to breathe again, because finally, someone was treating this like what it was: theft, not family drama, not overreacting. A crime. Ryan asked me for every detail I had. When Max went missing, what my parents said, whether I knew where they listed him. I told him about the notification I'd seen. Buyer confirmed, dog collected, cash received. and I told him I'd recorded my parents repeating the lie. Ryan went quiet for a second, then said, "Good, keep that, and send it to me." I emailed him the audio file right away. Then he said something that made my stomach twist. "If the buyer takes him to a vet, shelter, groomer, anywhere that scans him, that's our advantage." I nodded even though he couldn't see me. "What do I do right now?" Ryan's answer was simple. "You act like you believe them." When I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. My eyes were red, but my face was calm. And I realized this wasn't about who could shout louder. My family had spent years training me to stay quiet. This time, I was going to use that downstairs. My mom was already in her crisis manager mode, clinking pans like noise could cover guilt. Chloe was on the couch scrolling through wedding pages, smiling like she'd just been handed a gift. My dad kept checking his phone and pretending he wasn't. I walked in and lowered my voice. "I'm going back out to look again." My mom didn't even meet my eyes. "Take a jacket, it's cold." No sympathy, no regret, just instructions. So I played my role. For the next 2 days, I did a careful performance. I posted online like a worried owner. I put up a missing dog notice. I walked the neighborhood with a leash in my hand like I still needed it. I even asked a neighbor if they'd seen him loud enough for my mom to hear through the front window. And my parents watched me like I was a show they bought tickets for. But every night, when the house went quiet, I went back to my room and did the real work. I wrote down timelines. I saved screenshots. I checked Chloe's social media for any hints she couldn't resist posting. And she didn't disappoint. 3 days after Max ran away, she posted a photo of a bridal magazine with the caption, "Deposit paid. It's getting real." She added a little ring emoji and a heart. I stared at it for a long time, feeling something hot rise in my chest. Not rage exactly, more like clarity, because that deposit had a face to me. It was Max's face. On the fourth day, Ryan called again. We found him. My whole body went weak. I had to sit down on the edge of my bed so I wouldn't fall. "He's okay," Ryan said quickly, like he already knew what my mind was doing. "He's stressed, but he's not hurt." A vet scanned him after the buyer brought him in. Chip came back to me. My unit recovered him before the buyer could move him again. Tears hit my eyes so fast I didn't even get to stop them. I covered my mouth and breathed through my fingers, trying not to make a sound. Ryan continued, calm and controlled. "Here's the part you need to hear. The buyer is cooperating. They have messages, payment proof, and the listing link. Your dad used your sister's account." "Of course he did." Ryan's voice softened slightly. "Do you want to come see him tonight? We can keep him here for now, safe. But if your parents think he's still missing, it helps the case." It hurt to say it, but I said it anyway. "Keep him safe, please. Keep him with you until it's time." There was a pause. "Time for what?" Ryan asked, like he already knew but wanted me to say it out loud. I looked at the calendar on my wall. 2 weeks until Chloe's wedding. I wiped my face and forced my voice steady. Until they stopped feeling careful. Because my parents weren't just cruel. They were strategic when they needed to be. If I accused them now, they'd cry. They'd deny. They'd call me unstable. They'd say I was destroying Chloe's happiness. They'd make themselves the victims and hide the money trail. But if I let them relax, if I let them spend contracts and smile for photos, then every step they took would be another receipt. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I went downstairs and told them softly, "I'm starting to think you were right. Maybe Max really did run away." My mom's shoulders dropped like she'd been holding her breath for days. "See?" she said with that sweet fake voice. "We told you." My dad nodded too quickly again. "He'll come back eventually." Chloe didn't even pretend to be sad. She just said, "Can we focus on the wedding now? I'm behind on everything." I looked at her and felt my nails press into my palm. Then I smiled a small, tired smile. "Yeah, let's focus on the wedding." My mom's eyes narrowed a little, like she was trying to read me. "You're not mad at us, are you?" I tilted my head, letting my voice sound exhausted instead of angry. "What's the point? Max is gone. Getting mad won't change it." That line worked like a key. It unlocked their comfort. From that day on, they stopped watching me closely. They started celebrating, and the more they celebrated, the more careless they became. Boxes started showing up, wedding favors, dress alterations, expensive hair and makeup trials. My dad suddenly had opinions about champagne brands like he was a millionaire. Chloe started leaving receipts on the counter without thinking. And my mom started bragging to her friends on the phone about how we pulled it off. One night I walked into the kitchen and heard her say, laughing, "You do what you have to do for your child." People wouldn't understand. I stood in the hallway, quiet, and recorded that too. Then came the moment that almost felt funny in a dark way. My mom was stressing about the cake, saying the bakery wanted a bigger deposit for a luxury design. Chloe whined that she wanted a tall cake with gold detailing and fresh flowers. My dad muttered, "We should keep it simple." And I heard myself say, gently, like I was being helpful, "Chloe, it's your wedding. If you want the big cake, get the big cake. You'll regret it if you don't." They all turned to look at me, surprised, like they couldn't believe I was finally on their side. Chloe smiled. "Finally. You get it." My mom actually patted my hand. "That's my girl." And I nodded, sweet and quiet, while my stomach turned. Because here's the truth I want you to sit with for a second. I wasn't pushing them to do anything they weren't already willing to do. I was just letting them show the world exactly who they were. If you've been listening to Jenny's Karma Diaries for a while, you know karma doesn't always strike fast, but it strikes clean when you let people write their own confession. Now tell me this, because I really want to know how you think. If you had the power to expose them immediately, would you do it right away? Or would you wait for the moment when the consequences hit the hardest, in front of everyone who mattered? By the time the wedding week arrived, my parents were glowing with pride. Chloe was walking around the house practicing her entrance like the world was about to watch her become royalty. And I was quiet, helpful, and invisible. Exactly how they liked me. Meanwhile, Max was safe. Ryan sent me one short video at night sometimes. Max sitting calmly, tail thumping once, eyes sharp, like he knew he was part of something bigger. I watched those videos in my bed and whispered, "Soon." 2 nights before the wedding, my dad stood in the hallway and said something that told me everything. "This wedding is going to shut everyone up," he said, like he was finally winning a long game. I looked at him and nodded politely. "Yeah," I said. "It will." I was waiting for the doors to open. The wedding day arrived with the kind of fake perfection my sister had dreamed about her whole life. The venue looked like a magazine spread. White roses everywhere, candles lined up like tiny spotlights, and a string quartet playing something soft that made the whole room feel expensive on purpose. My mom floated around in a pastel dress, smiling too wide at everyone like she'd personally invented happiness. My dad stood near the entrance, shaking hands, proud and loud, soaking up compliments like he hadn't just stolen mine. And my sister, Chloe, looked like she was trying to outshine the room itself. She kept checking her reflection in every shiny surface, adjusting her veil, whispering to her bridesmaids, "Make sure the angles are good. If anyone records, tell them to stand on my left side." I stayed quiet, helpful, invisible. People barely noticed me, which was exactly how my family preferred it. A few relatives I hadn't seen in years gave me that polite, confused smile, like they remembered I existed, but didn't know what to do with that information. I sat near the back with my hands folded in my lap, breathing slow. My phone was on silent. My face was calm. But my heart was loud. Because I knew something no one else in that room knew. Max was safe. Max was not lost. Max was not gone forever. And the truth was about to walk in wearing uniforms. The ceremony started right on time. The groom, Daniel, stood at the front, trying to look confident, but I noticed the way his jaw kept tightening. He looked like a man who'd been told to smile through pressure. Chloe's friends whispered and giggled. Cameras lifted. People leaned into the moment like it was a movie scene they'd paid to watch. Then Chloe came down the aisle, holding my dad's arm, acting like a princess being delivered to her throne. My dad looked proud, almost emotional, and for a second I wondered if he ever felt shame at all. When they reached the front, the officiant began with the usual words about love and family and devotion. I listened to every sentence with a strange calm, like my brain had already stepped outside the room and was just watching it happen. Time slowed at the exact moment I'd been waiting for. The officiant smiled gently and said, "If anyone here has any reason these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now." The room went still in that playful, dramatic way weddings do. People always think it's a cute tradition, a formality, something from old movies. Then the doors at the back opened, not softly. They opened with purpose. A few heads turned, then more. I felt the ripple move through the guests like wind through tall grass. People started whispering. A bridesmaid's smile dropped. Someone near me muttered, "Is that police?" Four uniformed officers stepped into the aisle, calm, controlled, not rushed, not aggressive, just certain. And right beside them, walking like he owned the whole building, was Max, my Max. His ears were up, his eyes were alert. His leash was held by Officer Ryan, who looked straight ahead like this was just another part of his job. Max didn't look confused. He didn't look scared. He looked solid, like he knew exactly who the bad guys were. Chloe's bouquet slipped in her hands. Her mouth opened, and for the first time all day, she forgot to perform. "What is this?" she hissed, not even trying to keep her voice down. My mom's face went paper white. She took one step back, then another, like she might actually disappear if she moved fast enough. My dad's eyes locked on Max, and I watched the exact second his confidence cracked. He looked around, searching for an explanation, a loophole, a way to talk his way out of what was walking toward him. And then his eyes landed on me. I stood up slowly, not dramatic, not shaky, just done. Officer Ryan and the others stopped halfway down the aisle. Ryan held up a small handheld scanner, the kind vets use. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "This dog was reported stolen," he said, clear enough for the whole room to hear. "We have verified the microchip. This dog is registered under a law enforcement handler." A few guests gasped. Someone actually said out loud, "Oh my God." Chloe spun toward my parents. "Dad?" she whispered, panicked. "What did you do?" My dad took a sharp breath and tried to recover. He stepped forward with his hands out like he was calming everyone down. "This is a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "That dog ran away. We didn't." Ryan didn't react. He simply looked at my dad and said, "Sir, we have evidence of a sale. We also have a cooperating buyer. Payment confirmation and messages arranging pickup." My mom made a strangled sound, like a cry that didn't fully leave her throat. She grabbed my dad's sleeve, whispering, "Say something. Fix it." Chloe's eyes darted from the officers to the guests to the groom, like she was realizing her dream wedding was turning into a headline. I took one step into the aisle and spoke, calm and steady, like I was reading a truth that had been waiting its turn. "Dad," I said not loud, just clear. "You told me Max ran away. Mom told me the door was left open. You both looked me in the eyes and repeated that lie." My dad snapped, "Stop. Not here." I tilted my head slightly. "Where would you prefer it?" "At home, behind closed doors, where you can call me dramatic and pretend I imagined it." The officiant had stepped aside, speechless. Guests were openly filming now. You could hear phone cameras clicking. Chloe's bridesmaids looked like statues. Ryan looked at me for a brief second. I gave him a small nod. Then Ryan spoke again. "We also have an audio recording of the report given by the household stating the dog ran away, which conflicts with the documented sale and exchange of cash." My dad's face twisted. "Audio recording," he repeated, like the words didn't make sense. My mom's head jerked toward me. "You recorded us?" she whispered, horrified, like that was the real betrayal. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just said, "You recorded yourselves. I just saved it." Chloe suddenly shrieked, "This is my wedding." Her voice cracked and echoed through the room. "You're ruining my wedding." I looked at her and kept my tone even. "You ruined it when you put a price on someone I love." Daniel, the groom, had been standing stiffly through all of this, trying to understand. Now he finally stepped forward, eyes narrowed. "Chloe," he said slowly, "tell me right now, Did you know? Chloe's lips trembled. She looked at my dad, then my mom, then at the guests filming. And she did what she always did when she got cornered. She tried to make herself the victim. I didn't sell anything, she said, crying now dramatic and loud. I just wanted a wedding. Everyone gets a wedding. Daniel stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. His voice went quiet, but it cut through the room. Not like this. He turned slightly toward the officers. So the money for the deposits came from stealing a dog? No one answered him, because the silence was the answer. Daniel took a slow breath, then reached up and removed the ring from his own finger. He held it for a second like it weighed more than it should. Then he looked straight at Chloe. I can't marry into this, he said. I can't build a life on this. Chloe lunged forward. Daniel, wait. Please. But he stepped back, shook his head once, and walked away down the aisle, past the flowers, past the cameras, past my parents, like he couldn't get out fast enough. That sound, his shoes on the floor as he left, was louder than the music ever was. My mom started crying in the messy, real way now, not the pretty wedding way. We did it for her, she sobbed, looking around like she expected sympathy. We did it for our daughter. Ryan's voice stayed flat. Ma'am, you don't get to justify theft with emotions. Then one of the other officers stepped forward. Sir, he said to my dad, please turn around. My dad's eyes went wide. Wait, what? You can't. This is. The officer repeated, calm, firm. Turn around. My dad looked at my mom like she'd save him. She couldn't. He looked at Chloe. She was too busy screaming. He looked at the guests filming. None of them looked away. And then he turned. The handcuffs clicked. Chloe let out a sound I will never forget. Half scream, half sob. Like the universe was finally telling her no for the first time in her life. My dad shouted my name like it was a curse. You did this. I met his eyes and said quietly, no. You did this. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences. As the officers began to escort my parents out, Max glanced back at me. Ryan handed me the leash with a small nod, like he was returning something that always belonged with me. I wrapped my fingers around the leash, feeling Max's steady weight at my side. And for the first time in 2 weeks, my body remembered what relief felt like. Before we move into what happened next, after the wedding, after the arrests, after the internet got hold of the story, I want to ask you something because your answer says a lot about how you think. If you were sitting in that crowd and you saw the bride's parents get let out in handcuffs for selling a dog, would you keep filming? Or would you put your phone down and help the person who got hurt? When my parents were walked out of that venue, the wedding didn't end. It collapsed. Guests who had been smiling for photos 5 minutes earlier were suddenly stepping aside like they didn't want to be close to the mess. The string quartet didn't know what to do, so they just stopped playing, bows hovering in the air like they were frozen too. Someone's aunt was crying. Someone else was whispering, "This is insane," like it was entertainment instead of a real life breaking in public. Chloe dropped onto a chair near the front and kept repeating, "This can't be real," over and over, like if she said it enough times, the day would rewind. My mom tried to look back at her as the officers guided her out, like she wanted Chloe to see her as a martyr. But Chloe didn't look heroic. She looked exposed. Outside, it was colder than I expected. I remember the air hitting my face and realizing I hadn't properly breathed in weeks. Officer Ryan led Max to the side with me, away from the crowd, and handed me a short set of papers to sign: basic release forms, confirmation of recovery, and an agreement about the ongoing case. His voice stayed calm, but his eyes were serious. The buyer is filing a complaint too, he told me. They didn't know. They thought it was a legitimate sale. Now they want their money back. And they've already turned over every message, every payment record, and the pickup location. I nodded slowly. It hit me then. My parents didn't just steal from me. They set a trap for themselves. When you sell something you don't own, you don't only hurt the real owner. You end up owing everyone. That night, my parents didn't come home. And for the first time, the house felt quiet in a way that didn't scare me. Chloe came back hours later with smeared makeup and empty hands. No ring, no husband, no dream day. She walked in, saw Max sitting beside me, and her face twisted like she couldn't decide whether to be angry or afraid. "He's back," she whispered. I looked at her and kept my voice even. "He never should have been gone." She tried to harden her face. "So you're happy now? You got what you wanted." I almost laughed, but nothing about it was funny. "I wanted my dog," I said. "I wanted my family not to do something evil. Don't rewrite this like I'm the villain because you don't like the ending." Chloe opened her mouth, then closed it again. She didn't have a comeback that worked in reality. By morning, the internet had already done what it always does. Someone had posted clips from inside the venue. You could see the officers in the aisle. You could hear people gasping, and you could hear my sister's voice cracking as she screamed, "This is my wedding!" The comments were brutal. Some people were focused on the drama, but a lot of them were focused on Max, on how wrong it is to treat a living, breathing animal like a wedding budget. Chloe's friends stopped answering her calls. The venue kept the deposit. The baker kept the deposit. The photographer kept the deposit. It was like every place my parents had thrown stolen money into had a no refund sign waiting. And then karma got quieter and sharper. The buyer's complaints stacked on top of mine. The evidence stacked on top of that. The recording of my parents repeating the "he ran away" lie didn't just prove dishonesty. It showed intent, and it helped explain why they weren't confused. They were covering it up. Ryan's unit handled the official side, and I gave a statement that was short, clear, and honest. I didn't need to decorate it with anger. The facts were ugly enough on their own. A couple of days later, my mom called me from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, her voice came out in a broken rush. "Please," she said, "we can fix this. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them you forgive us." I stared at Max while she spoke. He was lying at my feet, calm, safe, finally sleeping like he trusted the world again. And I said the truth my whole childhood had trained me not to say. "You didn't make a mistake," I told her. "You made a choice, and you made it while looking me in the eye." She started crying harder. It was for Chloe. I cut in gently because I wasn't going to scream, but I wasn't going to bend either. "No," I said. "It was for you, for your image, for your favorite child, for your pride." Chloe's wedding was just the excuse. If you're watching this on Jenny's Karma Diaries, this is usually the part where people expect the hero to feel guilty. But I didn't. I felt clear. I felt like my life finally belonged to me. Let me ask you something. Do you think Daniel did the right thing by walking out, even though it left Chloe humiliated in front of everyone? Or should he have stayed and talked it out later? That weekend, I packed. Not in a dramatic slamming doorway, just quietly like I'd been quiet my whole life. Except this time, my silence wasn't submission. It was freedom. I moved my essentials first, then Max's things, his bed, his bowls, his leash, his toys. I took the missing dog flyers down from the neighborhood, and with every one I removed, it felt like I was closing a chapter. I left early in the morning, before the neighborhood really woke up. I didn't want a scene. I didn't want a goodbye speech. I just wanted air that didn't feel like it belonged to them. Max jumped into the front seat like he'd done it 100 times, like he already knew this was our new start. I buckled his harness with hands that finally felt steady. And for a second, I just sat there with my forehead against the steering wheel, letting the quiet settle in my chest. As I pulled away, I didn't look back at the house. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because I'd spent too many years looking back, hoping they'd turn into different people. That day at the wedding proved something simple. They only understood consequences. And karma didn't need me to yell. Karma just needed the truth to be seen. A week later, I got one last voicemail from Chloe. Her voice was thin, like she'd been crying for days. "You've ruined my life," she said. "Everyone hates me now." And I remember staring at the message, then looking at Max asleep with his paws tucked under him, safe and peaceful for the first time in a long time. I didn't call her back, because my dog wasn't a wedding expense. He wasn't a deposit. He wasn't something you trade for a photo-worthy day. He was a living soul who trusted me. And the moment my family decided to sell him, They made it clear I wasn't family to them either. My parents tried to negotiate from the moment they realized they couldn't charm their way out. They wanted me to drop it. They wanted me to be the bigger person. But being the bigger person doesn't mean being the person who gets hurt quietly so everyone else can stay comfortable. On Jenny's Karma Diaries, I've learned that the calmest boundary is often the strongest one. No access, no excuses, no second chances for the same betrayal. If you were me, what would you do next? Would you ever speak to your parents again if they sold your pet? Or would you go no contact for good? In the end, here's what happened. The deposits were gone, the wedding was over before it began. My parents had to face real legal consequences, and they couldn't buy their way out with tears this time. The buyer got their money back through the process, and Max was officially documented and protected the right way. And me? I got something I didn't even realize I'd been missing. Peace. That night, Max and I drove until the sky turned orange, and the roads got quieter. I rolled the window down and he stuck his nose out just a little, sniffing the air like he was tasting freedom. I thought about everything my mother used to say. Don't be dramatic. Stop overreacting. Family is family. Then I thought about how quickly they threw me away the moment I stood between them and what they wanted. People say a dog is a person's most loyal friend. My family taught me something sharper than that. Sometimes a dog can be a better relative than the people who share your last name. Before you go, share this story with someone who loves animals, because too many people still think pets are disposable. And comment below. Would you have waited until the wedding day like I did? Or would you have exposed them the moment you found the proof? And one more thing. Please, microchip your pet and make sure the registration details are correct and up to date. That tiny piece of information can be the difference between losing them forever and getting them back. This is Jenny's Karma Diaries, and if there's one thing I know for sure, it's this. Karma doesn't bark loud. Karma just shows up, right on time.